For a drink, we have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, you're watching and listening to GB News. This is Saturday morning with Esther and Phil.
We've got a cracking show lined up for you today. We'll be talking about how difficult it is to get access to cash, the energy price cap announced yesterday, and we'll be joined by political commentator Sophie Corcoran, who this week released an emotional video saying she'd been bullied out of the Conservative Party.
That and much more after your latest headlines with Polly.
Good morning, 10 o'clock, Polly Middlehurst with your latest GB News. The Chancellor has warned middle-income earners could be among those struggling to pay their energy bills this winter. Nadeem Zahawi says he's concerned about people who aren't on benefits, telling the Daily Telegraph newspapers those earning around £45,000 a year may also need government support. That's after Ofgem announced an 80% hike in the energy price cap to over £3,500 from October. The cost of living crisis will be a priority for the next Prime Minister. The Conservative MP Robert Halfon told GB News Rishi Sunak has a proven track record of helping the country.
I do believe that his track record shows that when it counts, he does help with the cost of living. The government spent £37 billion. It's a huge amount of money, especially with the current spending pressures, to try and help people over the next few months. He acted properly when times were tough. If we didn't have the furlough scheme, my constituents would have become destitute. Our businesses would have closed.
Well, the policy director of the Centre for Social Justice, Joe Shalam, says he believes the current support package doesn't go far enough.
What we've been doing at the Centre for Social Justice is looking at the hit to incomes, particularly those on low incomes, over the autumn and winter period. And what we found is that even when taking into account the existing support package, which is hugely welcome in so many ways, we're still seeing considerable falls in the real incomes of those who are already struggling, frankly. Where we are now is a very, very different picture to where we were when the calculations were made about what needed to go into that package. And it's really urgent that we update our cost of living policy response.
Well, in other news today, police are saying silence is not an option as they appeal for more information on the shooting of Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool. The 9-year-old was killed in her home on Monday night. A second man is now being questioned after being arrested on suspicion of murder yesterday. Police also released a video showing another arrest with a 36-year-old man from the Huyton area detained on Thursday. They're urging people with names to come forward to help the police investigation. Motorists are facing a weekend of traffic chaos as they try to get away for the bank holiday. The AA has issued an amber warning with an estimated 15 million trips expected over the next couple of days. It's only the second time ever it's issued the alert, which is used to indicate traffic congestion. AA President Edmund King shared his advice for those setting off.
Prepare your car, check out things like your tyre pressures, your windscreen wiper fluid, your oil, check that all out. Check your route. You can get alternative routes. And one thing we're also saying, we find at the AA, when people break down, almost 40% of people don't really know where they are.
Drop-off fees have increased at 2/3 of the UK's major airports since 2019. Research by motoring services company the RAC found that 16 of the 22 airports have introduced or raised charges for dropping off passengers in the last 3 years. They say drivers will be stunned by some of the so-called sky-high fees. And the government's announced a £56 billion plan to crack down on sewage spills. The investment will be spread over 25 years. Under the proposals, water companies in the UK will face tough targets to minimise pollution. That comes after dozens of pollution warnings were issued for beaches and swimming spots in England and Wales last week, following heavy rainfall that overwhelmed sewage systems. Amateur gardeners will be banned from using peat-based compost. The government says the sale would be banned in England's garden centres and supermarkets within 18 months. The move is to protect the UK's severely degraded moorlands. And a car once used by Diana, Princess of Wales, will be sold at auction today. The black Ford Escort RS Turbo was driven by Princess Diana from 1985 to 1988. Last June, another Ford Escort used by Diana sold at auction for £52,000. The car's being sold by Silverstone Auctions and is being offered with no reserve price. That's it. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens. Now let's get back to Esther and Philip.
Good morning and welcome to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil. Coming up on today's show,
we'll be talking about the massive drop in free-to-use ATMs at a time when people are relying on cash to help them budget during the cost of living crisis.
And is Dominic Cummings right? Was Rishi Sunak talking dangerous rubbish when he said the government gave too much power to scientists during COVID lockdowns? We'll be discussing this with author and journalist Laura Dodsworth.
And this Wednesday marks 25 years since the tragic death of Princess Diana. We'll be talking all things royal with the one and only Angela Levin.
And as ever, we want to hear from you today, so if you want to get involved in the show, please email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. Before all of that, though, we're delighted to be joined in the studio by TV presenter and celebrity chef Kevin Woodford. Kevin, welcome.
Hello.
What's been getting your juices flowing this week?
There's an awful lot of really horrible stories going on at the moment, very, very sad stories and concerning stories. And I wanted to find something a little bit light, just to sort of lift the mood a little bit.
Did you manage?
Well, it was not easy, let me tell you, right? So, quick question, Phil. Have you ever had a self-tan? Have you been to one of these tanning salons and made yourself look lovely and brown? Did you do that before you got married? No,
For the wedding day, is that what you were thinking?
Yeah,
no, we didn't.
I have never been to a tanning place. In fact, I never have a tan. I mean, I don't even expose myself to get tanned.
I would hope you wouldn't. As an MP,
well, you know,
you'd never expose yourself.
Tastefully, I was meaning, Kevin.
Well, let me tell you, right, you're missing out because the increase in sales and people going to tanning centres, men, has risen massively, and 40% of people who go for a tan now are men.
Do you do it, Kevin?
I've never done it. No, I haven't actually. And
Have you both got the same colouring? Would you, if you went for a man tan, would you go brown or would you go red?
No, that's a good point, because there are different types, and if you think about it, I mean, I go back a few years when I first started, getting involved in TV shows, and I remember going to a function with David Dickinson. Do you remember David Dickinson from whatever it was?
I think he's been on one. He's
constantly.
Yeah, I mean, he is. He's sort of this peculiar colour, and he is. He's a nice man, but a peculiar colour, and he's best described. His colour is best described as sort of a stale tea. Do you know what I mean? You know when you leave the old breakfast tea bag in the cup for too long? That's David's colour. The whole Gen Z, right? Generation Z, people born between 1997 and 2012, they refer to it as glowing up. Okay, so it really is taken off. It's taken
Not growing up,
no, glowing up. They didn't grow up. They didn't grow up. They glowed up, right? And if you think of Trump, we look at Trump, and there's a really bad example of somebody that's gone for it, because what he does is he misses his ears and he misses this part. The rest of it is very white and he's very brown. Silvio Berlusconi, 85-year-old man who married a 32-year-old lady, best describes his colour as. They describe him as creosote visage.
Does he go to these places?
Well, I think
85 and he gets to 30. Where do you book into these places?
Well, for the 32-year-old or for the tan. He said, I mean, people said to him, well, you're not worried about, age difference and dying. He said, if she dies, she dies. Couldn't care less. So then you go through these descriptions. Well, are you right to have the tan, or should you just put makeup on? And if you remember the ex-New York mayor, Giuliani, he actually used makeup rather than actually going for a tan. And he was at a news conference in 2020 when, because of the heat, it was all running down his face. So maybe he should have had the tan. It's not a great look when you think about it.
It just isn't a great look at all with starry eyes.
But here's a serious thing, right? In some respects, I mean, I lived in Spain for a while, and I can remember people who were friends of ours in Spain and lived in Spain for many, many years, and they'd had the tan, the natural tan in Spain. They were very wrinkled, and they were really quite aged because of it. So maybe the answer is, take the Towie version. The Towie is, go for a nice caramel tan, get the teeth nice and white, and it's a great look, and you're not risking your health by lying underneath a very, very hot sun.
So the spray tan, but that definitely Trump reminds me of the 1970s sun ray lamp. And you put on what you like swimming goggles, because you always see he's got white round his eyes, and the rest of his brow. So it's moved, hasn't it, from the sun ray lamp to the sunbeds to the spray.
It's a full spray now.
I just wear makeup.
Now, I don't know if you play the lottery, Kevin, or not.
Every week.
Well, you want to be careful.
And I'm here again today because I didn't win.
You want to be careful because there's a story here about a chap, Kirk Stevens, and his ex. The key thing is his ex, Laura Hoyle, who won this Set for Life jackpot at the lottery. You get £10,000 a month for 30 years. Yeah, not bad, is it? 3.6 million over 30 years. And they've won the money. The cheque was actually written out to both of them, but it was she paid for it on her card.
Okay.
And she's basically dumped him and run off with the money and said he's not having a penny. They went to buy a house together, they looked at it together, they bought it, and she's dumped him. She's in the house, he's been left with nothing. And he's feeling particularly aggrieved because he says that when they met, she moved into his house. She lived there rent-free for nothing. And
I understand what rent-free means.
But, just checking. But instead of paying the rent, she said she'd put £25 into the lotto every week.
And that was her contribution?
That was her contribution, and they've won.
And she's dumped him.
And she's dumped him.
But you see, he's a lucky man because she's not a very nice person, is she? Imagine, he could have been stuck with her with all that money for all those years.
Well, I'm not sure he's feeling very bitter about it.
The moral of the story is either pay for your lottery tickets in cash or a joint
Or get a solicitor to draw up an agreement beforehand about what happens if you win.
You need Andrew on this, don't you? Because there must be a legal reason that you can...
Now, that one is true, whereas the story I read during the week I thought was a spoof. And this was schools saying they would close the schools, send the children home, to save money on the school's energy bills. So let's get that right. They're going to send every child home, who are going to then have to put the heating on, every teacher home to put the heating on, and this was supposedly for them to save the school energy bills. Now, I'm saying this is nonsense. To me, this sounds like industrial action by another name, and shame on them after the kids have suffered so much during lockdown and all of the downsides of children not mixing one another, their education, their mental health. So as I said, I thought that was a spoof, but it was for real, and actually we've got to make sure it doesn't happen.
It's crazy, Alan. It's totally crazy. I mean, when you think of what the children have missed over the course of the last couple of years, you know, on their education, I think that's absolutely crazy, you know. Keep the school open, put a big thick jumper on. Not a problem. Not a problem.
Yeah, no, well, absolutely. I think there's a lot of truth in that. Kevin, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It's always a delight. Thank you very much. We'll see you at 11.
OK, look forward to it.
Now, economists have warned that Britain is facing a year of double-digit inflation as energy bills continue to soar.
Yesterday, Ofgem announced that the energy price cap would rise from £1,971 to £3,549 a year from October the 1st.
Well, joining us now to discuss the cap on households and the impact of the ongoing energy crisis on small businesses is business commentator Justin Urquhart-Stewart. So it's on the front page of pretty much every paper today. Yep. Whether it's energy bills will soar, whether it's lives being lost, whether it's Truss's U-turn. So what are we in for, and what does that cap really mean?
Well, first of all, you're quite right. What is the cap? It's not a cap to start.
Exactly.
Let's try English. You get the impression that's all I'm going to have to pay. No, that's just merely the cost of the therm of actually being able to get the power. No, you could find yourself using more power and paying a huge amount more. And also, that's a cap which will apply, once you understand what the cap is, to individuals. It won't apply to businesses. And so really, no one really understands what's going through. And of course, now what we're seeing at the moment is actually our government, have we got one? But actually our government actually trying to work out what they're going to be doing, and they're reacting because they're not quite sure how big this issue is, and it is huge. And I'm afraid what we have to do is regard it as big as it's a financial version of the pandemic. Regarded as that, it's going to last 2 or 3 years. It's going to be very expensive. This is not about 400 quid or anything like that, and you have to prepare to make some decisions. The good news is there is a way out of it. The bad news is it's going to take some time to do it, but we can actually make sure those who are at most risk can be protected, and businesses also protected, and particularly the area we're so good at in this country, small businesses. Now, we've set up more small businesses than France and Germany. We're really good at doing this. It's our biggest employer. But if you're running a pub and your cost of electricity is doubled and going to double again, you're probably going to close the pub.
I mean, it would be crackers, wouldn't it, to spend all that money keeping businesses going throughout the pandemic, you know, tens of billions of pounds to keep them going, only to see them all close now as a result of the energy prices. Now Labour they've proposed a price freeze on the unit where we are now, which is very popular. And would at least solve the problem in the short term. And I think there's a lot of merit in what they're suggesting, because the problem's so big. I don't really see a practical alternative. But I guess the problem is that no one knows how long these high energy prices are going to go on for. So you can say we'll do it for 6 months. It'll be a huge cost, but this could be going on for years and years and years.
It could last easily 2 years, as I say, like the pandemic. So the thing to do is short term, you're quite right, put a cap in, stop it, so we can actually now try and measure what the situation is and how we work our way out of it. How you work out of it, is actually, I'm afraid, draw up a worse position, and it's going to cost billions. The government can still borrow billions. You actually put that into a separate fund. That fund is then going to will be paid back once this is over in, say, 2 or 3 years, when it starts coming down again. When does it come down? When we start finding alternative supply sources, which we will have. And then that gets repaid over 10 to 15 years by the industry. So it takes time to do it. So it's a government loan effectively covering it, being repaid by the industry. It takes time to set up. You then have to apply that money, targeting it to those individuals who need it especially, not to everybody, and also to those small businesses who need protection as well. So it's going to take time. That's why you're quite right. Put the cap in now, then work out how to do it. It's going to be complicated, but there is a way out.
And obviously in the papers today, the Chancellor saying, reality check, we are going to have to help a range of people. It won't just be the poorest people. It will be people on £45,000, £50,000 because nobody has that cushion in their monthly outgoings. He said that. And then another thing, which politicians are never usually meant to say, he did say, and you might need to reduce your energy use. And that, I know it's a shock, but people are usually frightened to say that, but you are going to do that. And I think, you know, some people can do that. And then obviously businesses might struggle a little bit more, hence the support we need for businesses. Where would you go from there, Justin?
Well, one of the things we should have been doing before, which is actually relatively straightforward and quite cheap, is start on the insulation process. We know a lot of our properties are very badly insulated. It doesn't cost a great deal to actually get some of that done and can be done quite quickly. That's not going to solve the problem. It's just one of it. However, after that, let's actually go for the cap, and then you actually have to work out actually how many people are going to be involved in this. And you're quite right. This is not just going to be the poorest. This is going to be a middle-class pain. And how do you actually measure that? And that's going to take some time. I suggest that's probably going to take 3 or 4 months to try and work out and push it through. The businesses, though, I think they're going to need support really very quickly indeed.
Do we have any idea at all how many businesses are going to go bust if something's not done to help them? Do we?
Well, if you actually want to look at worse of this, you could be actually talking about more than 1 million businesses going bust.
Wow.
But, I mean, that's sort of doing that in the air with it. But no, and that's painful. 1 million businesses, and then you actually think about, well, and how many jobs are that? That's 2 or 3. That's hell.
I know the Federation of Small Businesses have come out and said 53% they think of small businesses could go bang. And as you say, that's a lot of businesses in people's towns, villages, high street. That will have a devastating impact.
I suppose the cost of doing something is very expensive, but the cost of not doing something probably will work out even more expensive.
And that's the issue, absolutely right.
Yeah. Justin, thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant. Now, coming up after the break, we'll be talking about the disappearing ATMs and the difficulty this is causing for people wanting to use cash to help them budget in the cost of living crisis. Don't go anywhere.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome back. The time now is 10:22. Now, the number of free-to-use ATMs has fallen by 25% in the last 4 years, at a time when people are reportedly turning to their ATMs because they need the cash to deal with this cost of living crisis.
ATMs are funded by the interchange fee, which is a charge banks pay to operators for every withdrawal made, but cuts have meant that ATM operators are forced to pass costs on to consumers by making them pay to use. So to discuss the story further, we're joined in the studio by the Chief Executive of Note Machine, the biggest ATM supplier, Philip Bocock. Philip, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So why are all these ATMs closing down? What's the problem?
Well, there are two reasons, and you've touched on one of them. I mean, one of them is there has been a reduction in the use of cash over the COVID period. So the use of cash has fallen by 25%, so there is a natural reduction. But fundamentally also the funding model that was in existence pre-COVID has changed. So there is now no real methodology. And so operators like ourselves have been forced to move free-to-use ATMs into the pay-to-use model. So people have to pay whether it's 50 pence or £1 to withdraw cash. And what that has meant is the availability of ATMs for those people who really need cash at the moment is declining.
So basically what you're saying is the banks need to stump up some more money to enable you to keep these ATMs going and free to use.
No, it's not quite as simple as that. I mean, listen, it is not as simple as that at all. And really what I'm saying is what we would like is we'd like a real clear, transparent methodology so we can understand as we move forward where the interchange fee that you spoke about is going to go to and how it's going to move, so we can then put ATMs in the right place for people going forward.
So obviously lots of people use cash to help them budget, particularly at this particular time. It's, you know, so they need to be able to get their cash, and yet we're seeing more and more places who are saying we don't take cash anymore. Would you like to see, as somebody who wants people to withdraw cash from machines, would you like to see the government say to businesses, you must take cash?
Well, I think the important thing is it's what areas of society really need cash and really use cash going forward. And there are two real sort of predominant people who use it. One is the elderly. Yeah. We know that sort of the majority of over 75s in this country prefer to use cash as their payment method, but we also know those in sort of the more disadvantaged socioeconomic groups also use it. So there are 4 million people, this is even pre the current economic climate, who use cash as their preferred method of budgeting. So it's these groups that we have to focus on, and I think as we enter this environment we're about to go into, we just saw the price rises in energy today, or yesterday rather, and we need to make sure that there is access to cash for individuals.
Lots of people are saying they think now, because so many cash machines have gone, and if you're in small villages, if you're in the sort of rural area, there's none at all, they say they believe it's actually a push, you know, whether they're not thinking it's a conspiracy theory, they think that people want to get rid of money full stop so that everybody can be monitored online. Now, do you think that's going too far? But that's what people are saying now.
I'm not so sure it's going too far, but I think that is key. And it's not just ATMs if we need to think about. We need to think about bank branches as well. So you only have to look at the high streets at the moment, and we see a plethora of banks withdrawing from high streets. So we've seen a similar, you mentioned the 25% decline in the number of ATMs. We've seen a similar number of banks declining as well, coming out of high streets. And that again is having an effect on people. And it's not just withdrawing cash we need to think about, it's also depositing cash. And it's for small businesses and so on and so forth. So I think the government, I know in the Financial Services Bill they're looking at it, but the government really need to focus on where is cash needs to be available, but also where do banks and the banking facilities need to be available for the consumer as well.
There's so many businesses that do depend on and need money. Money is, for lots of people, the oil that keeps the machine that is the country afloat. And to think you can remove it so you can have an overview on what everybody's doing is lunacy. And so we do need to make sure we've got the cash points, people have the cash if they have it, and we can keep the country going.
And that's exactly right. I mean, especially in the current economic climate, I mean, people are going to revert to cash as their budgeting tool because they're going to take out £100 or £50, whatever the number is at the start of the week or the start of the month. They can say, that's what I've got to spend this week or this month. And that is where we're going to go, I think, over the next few months and years.
Now, the thing that struck me was that because I always thought, why do businesses want to take cards when you have to pay a fee to the, it seems surely you take cash, but businesses I was speaking to said that they're charged more by the banks for depositing cash than they are actually by the credit card companies for processing a credit card. So should the government be looking at this in the bill to say that banks should not be able to charge excessive amounts to businesses for depositing cash?
I mean, I think the government need to look at all areas, not just, as to your point, not just the access to cash, but also the deposit methodology. Exactly that, to make sure that all users, whether it's individuals or companies, or small businesses particularly, can deposit their cash appropriately. So I don't disagree. I think we should be looked at.
And you said that during the pandemic, the amount of people using cash went down and that was one of the issues. Has it gone back up since the end of the pandemic?
Interestingly, we're starting to see, through our numbers, we're starting to see people continue to withdraw. We're starting to see the use of pay-to-use slightly declining as people are really thinking about it. But more interestingly, what we're starting to see is balance inquiries going up. So people are checking their balances, but we're also starting to see rejected transactions. So people actually trying to withdraw but not having enough cash in their bank account. Those are going up as well, which is something we also saw when we looked back at 2008 and to 2010. We also saw that trend then as well.
So as the biggest provider of these ATMs, if you just look forward a year, well, can we expect a reversal of this? Are we going to see more ATMs go in, more pay-to-use ATMs, or
I think it depends on the funding model. I mean, to give you an idea, our biggest cost in our business is cash. So we dispense £15 billion a year. We have in our business about £500 million of cash sitting in our machines and in our vaults at any one time. So actually, as the interest rates go up, our biggest cost is interest, is the cost of cash. If that goes up, then yes, you would see it, unless this interchange fee that you spoke about right at the start reflects the increase in interest rates.
Philip Bowcott, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we hope that there'll be more ATM machines and more access to cash.
Just buy your lottery tickets with cash, that's all.
Yeah, we all found that out.
We certainly all
found that. Now, look, Rishi Sunak has said that the UK government gave too much power to scientists during COVID lockdowns, added that they were not honest about the potential downsides of a lockdown.
The Tory leadership hopeful also said it was wrong to scare people with posters showing COVID patients on ventilators.
And scientists have hit back, commenting that, ministers were responsible for what happened, not them. And Boris Johnson's former top aide, Dominic Cummings, said Sunak was talking dangerous rubbish.
Well, to help us understand whether the former Chancellor was talking dangerous rubbish, we're now joined by the author Laura Dodsworth, who wrote the book A State of Fear: How the UK Government Weaponised Fear During the COVID-19 Pandemic. Laura, thank you very much for joining us. Rishi Sunak seems to have basically confirmed everything you wrote in your book. What do you make of his intervention?
Well, I mean, it's no great surprise to me. I wrote the book on it, like you say. I mean, the thing is that back when I was researching that book, advisors to the government, including some of the social scientists on Spy B, so they were the behavioural scientists advising the government on how to nudge us into complying with lockdown, they broke cover to speak to me, to tell me that they thought that the use of fear was unethical, and even used language like dystopian and totalitarian. So Rishi Sunak is saying something that has actually been out there for a while. I wish he'd said it earlier. Also, one of the founders of the Nudge Unit, called Simon Ruder, was in a publication called Unheard, and he said that one of the most egregious things that the government did was to convey so much fear upon the public. This kind of attitude now is coming from multiple sources, but now we have one of the highest ministers in the land confirming that, yes, there was a culture of fear within government which stifled dissent and debate, which was vital at a time of crisis, but in his words, scared the public witless.
Who do you blame for all this, Laura? Do you blame the scientists for their extreme approach to this, or do you blame the politicians for not challenging it enough?
I think it's complex, and I think there's a danger in these times. Everyone's looking at where we are now. We're in a cost of lockdown crisis. The danger is to look for scapegoats and to look for easy answers. And goodness knows there are going to be people who do not want to rehash this, because facing the music is hard. Nobody wants to concede that they supported such damaging policies or even that they cheered them on. But we have to look in a very honest and nuanced way where responsibility lies. Ultimately, of course, politicians were responsible, and I think it was probably a very convenient political narrative at the time to say they were following science. And we mustn't actually let anybody get away with shirking any responsibility. Personally, I think that Rishi Sunak should have spoken up at the time and perhaps resigned to a noisy fanfare, because he would have had the opportunity then to draw attention to what happened. And I want to say something else about extending this scrutiny beyond COVID. Back in 2011, not long after the inception of the Nudge Unit, the Science and Technology Committee noted that there were serious ethical concerns with governments deploying behavioural science, because what that effectively does is change people's behaviour in ways in which they're not aware. There has been no public consultation. There is no public mandate. There is no public permission. When we were frightened in order to comply with the rules, and when nudges deployed continually from COVID to climate change, it is without the public's consent and consultation.
Do you think this will now be the start of the unravelling of lockdown and people looking into it now that Rishi has broken cover?
I think absolutely. And actually, I think it's going to generate, hopefully, a lot more honesty about the damages of lockdown. It's going to be pretty difficult to avoid with the inflation where it is. But like I said, it's really important to not just to not assume this only happened with COVID. It's happening right now with nudging the public towards net zero goals. We have to be honest about this. The same tools are being deployed. You know, we're living in a world now where everything's colour-coded to let us know whether we're on an amber warning or a red warning. There are reports jointly authored by broadcasters and the Nudge Unit about how to change people's behaviour without them even being aware through TV programming. This has now become really insidious within government, and I really don't think it's any way to run a country, to nudge the population and especially to frighten them into following unpopular policies.
And you unearthed a lot of this in that sort of Spy Pie B sort of minutes, which said our sense of personal threat needed to be elevated. And that seems to be what was used across the board, and a very myopic look at things, just here for today, and not looking at the long-term issues. I know I wrote an article, I think it was autumn 2020, vilified for some of the things I wrote, but I was questioning the 360 view of the world that politicians should have.
And Esther, you were absolutely right too. In Rishi Sunak's interview in The Spectator, which I've followed up on in a piece in CapEx, he talked about the fear-mongering, and he draws attention to some of the really gruesome advertising. And let's not forget, hundreds of millions have been spent on advertising to frighten the population. But the other thing he says is that we were kept in the dark about the costs of lockdown. And I know you called for cost-benefit analysis. Various politicians did. I did. And yes, we were vilified. We were told that we were putting the economy before lives. But now we see what happens if you don't also consider the economy, because economy is lives. You know, wealth is health. So that was another really important decision that was made, to not interrogate the risks, to not inform the public about the risks, so that they weren't aware of the trade-offs that were going to come further down the line. We must never do that again.
Is the good thing about this, Laura, though, that it seems to me that if we are faced with a COVID-style pandemic again, presumably from what we're hearing, any government will be less likely to introduce a blanket lockdown, because now people are trying to back out of saying that they supported it at the time?
I hope so. I hope so. I think it's really hard to call, because what we've actually seen is that the government and the behavioural scientist advisors, who are quite embedded within government, are actually quite content to manipulate the public into following difficult policies. Like I say, it's happening right now with climate change. So you may not have a lockdown, but you could have something which is just as controlling and despicable, but give it a different name. I mean, look how close we came to vaccine passports. Look how close we were to swerving a biosecurity state. We can't rest on our laurels.
Laura Dodsworth, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Coming up after the break, we'll be joined in the studio by political commentator Sophie Corcoran, who will tell us about a video she released on social media this week about how she's been bullied out of the Conservative Party.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, earlier this week, political commentator Sophie Corcoran released an emotional video to social media in which she said she had been bullied out of the Conservative Party. Let's take a quick look and listen.
They pretended and they waxed lyrical about wanting more working class people out and more women in politics, but they don't care about the fact that one of their most notable worthies, let's be honest, who is a working class woman, has been bullied out of the party and out of politics altogether.
Well, Sophie joins us now to tell us more about her experiences. Sophie, what happened?
Well, basically, for a year, there's a large proportion of the young Conservatives that just don't like me, and I don't really know why. It's ever since I sort of came into politics. I joined politics and I got a big platform quite quickly, largely because there's no other person like me really in our party that's from the sort of background that I'm from, and I represent a really large part of the electorate and a real large part of our members.
What is that background then? What is the background?
Well, you know, I'm a working class girl from a place called Thurrock in Essex. We've never ever had a homegrown politician before. None of our MPs have ever been from where we are. So, you know, I'm sort of from that, I don't want to say the UKIP-y type of background, but that sort of wing of the Conservative Party, you know, the sort of populist people that are concerned with, you know, immigration, with climate change. I went to one of the worst state schools in the country. It's actually got shut down now, so it doesn't exist anymore. And yeah, I'm just obviously a young female as well. Like, I've just finished my first year at uni. So when I joined this, I was still only in sixth form, and obviously I was doing TV alongside being in sixth form. It's quite an odd thing to do.
So a couple of things. What was it they've said or done? I mean, what is it that's made you say, I can't tolerate that any longer? Some people could say for politics, you need a thick skin.
Yeah, well, I don't actually think I can say it because of the Ofcom rules.
OK.
So I can't actually tell you what they said, otherwise we're going to be in trouble from Ofcom. But people have said to me, you know, you shouldn't have said anything, you need a thick skin. Ultimately, if you want politicians to be like real people, then you've got to let us behave like real people. And I don't apologise for it, because I am somebody that a lot of people look up to in this party in terms of the youth wing. I am the most notable young Conservative in this country, and most importantly, the most notable female young Conservative. And I spoke to a member of the House of Lords on Thursday, who I'm good friends with, and she said that there is absolute lack of female role models within our party, but especially of young female role models, because you have to be older.
Do you think, you know, if it is jealousy, and maybe it is, you know, I said you were on TV, you've got a platform, you're very able to speak up and talk for yourself. But do you think you'd have to sort of be slightly careful yourself by saying you are unique and you're the only person, and I'm the best person to be this and I am whatever? Do you think you could maybe tailor your language a bit more? Do you think you've got to take a little bit of responsibility there? Do you see why people could just get a bit jealous?
Well, there's no reason for them to be. You know, I have a right to do as best as I can, and if they don't like the fact that where I'm from or who I am, that's their own problem. It's not my problem to deal with. But I am somebody that a lot of people in the youth wing of the party look up to, and especially a lot of young females. So therefore, I tried to deal with it internally within the party. They wouldn't have it. And I thought, well, there's going to be a lot of young girls that are in this party that are seeing the way the most notable young female in this party is being treated. And that's going to put them off. And that's not something that I want to see, because we do need to get more working class people in this party, because ultimately, the times are changing. The Conservative Party isn't the party of the old rich white middle class anymore. We saw it in 2019. More working class people voted for the Conservative Party than middle class people did, and the majority of the working class people voted for the Conservatives.
Phil, do you think this is why we set up blue collar conservatism a long,
long
time ago?
Blue collar conservatism. So, I mean, are you aware of this happening to other people, or is this something?
I'm actually quite surprised, because I got a lot of messages from another young, and there is another young commentator who is slightly older than me. She's also a female. She's also got quite a large platform, and she also said the exact same thing as me, that when she started to gain popularity within the party, the most abuse that she got was actually from Conservatives, and that is also my experience as well. Yes, we get abuse from the left, and we can expect that, but the majority of abuse we get are the people from our own side, and that's a massive problem. But we can see it extending all the way up to the top of the parliamentary party, which is why those sorts of attitudes have actually probably led to us getting rid of a Prime Minister in one of the most difficult economic crises this country has faced, and doing an ultimately massive act of self-harm, because this is an attitude that goes from the very bottom of the Conservative Party to the YCs to the very top of it.
Now, we should say that the Conservative Party say that they've investigated the complaint and were unable to uphold it. So we need to put that on the record. But what's the future hold for you now in politics, Sophie? What can we expect to see from you next?
Well, to be honest, I don't really know. I'm just kind of busy keeping up with all of the work I have to do. I've only just finished my first year of uni, so I should probably, get through my degree first. But we'll see. Maybe I have a future in this party and in politics, but it's very unlikely anybody from my background is going to become a member of parliament. As I've said, no one's done it before from Thurrock, and it's very unlikely that someone is going to do it. So that probably won't happen, but in terms of the media and in terms of politics, then, I'm here to...
Well, it's OK. You've got somebody from Doncaster who's got there, somebody from Liverpool, and trust me, it's not a hotbed of conservatism in Liverpool.
No, but we wish you well. We hope you don't give up on. We hope you don't give up on politics.
No, I don't think she will. I can see that gritty determination there. You're not giving up on anything. Good for you.
And thank you for sharing your story with us.
Excellent. Now, let's turn our attention to the royal family, because there is a lot to chew over, from Prince Harry's upcoming memoir to Princess Diana's 25th anniversary, as well as Meghan Markle's podcast.
To talk us through the latest stories, we're now joined by the royal commentator and biographer, Angela Levin. Angela, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. It's obviously it's the 25th anniversary of Princess Diana's death this week coming up. What can we expect from the royal family generally, and what can we expect from Harry and Meghan?
Well, I think it's fascinating how important that anniversary is, really. 25 years, and yet still people long for her and respect her and hold her in a very high level. So it's quite moving, that for all the mistakes she might have made, her charm and her compassion for people and children who were either very ill. The HIV thing she did, she held somebody's hand when no one would go near somebody with HIV, cares about ill children. So that's really stayed. That's very interesting. I mean, Harry has said that it's a very special day for him, which he's going to spend with his children, and that he will continue to he feels that she is there for him, spiritually there, and that he is there. She's with them every day, and she's now more with him than she is with William, because he says William's sorted, but she needs still to help me sort myself. And it's interesting that he's been played yesterday polo for Centaurly, and this is a charity he set up in his gap year. Well, he went there and decided he would, and that's for children who had HIV parents or died, and he had was an extraordinary eye-opener for him. He was fantastically good with the small children who all loved him, and he would play football with them, but he actually saw the poverty and the neglect, which is very much what his mother did see. And I think that that's a line that the polo, even though he came on a private plane when he says it's only for the family, he did that by himself. We'll excuse him this time. And he really does care about that. And
but Angela, what about his memoirs that were Harry's memoirs, meant to come out at the end of this year, which I believe the Buckingham Palace and the other royals were bracing themselves for the shock there. It's been delayed. What's this about? Is it still more dirt he wants to unearth on them? Is he still unhappy with them?
Well, it seems that they were due out in October. He had a very well-known ghostwriter for it, because obviously he can't do that. It's not a skill he has. But I think he's very worried. He's in the middle of two very different positions. One is, if it does come out and it slags off his parents and the Queen and the royal family in the UK again, I think he's going to be in trouble, because we've all heard more than enough about what a terrible time he has, which is not always true. But if he doesn't write it, Meghan will be furious, because she's been helping him write it. Not a surprise there. And he risks it with his family. They need the family to earn money commercially, which they said they would never do when they left in 2020. But I think it's a very difficult spot for him to be in.
And we're also hearing that the royal... Sorry, Angela, what was that?
He might take out some of the extra, some of the real nasty bits, you see. That's what I think he will do in the end. He's got to get it out, because he's been offered about 18 million from the publisher. So I think he'd downtone it. If he downtone it too much, it's the same old stuff we've heard already for 2 years or 4 years now.
But we're hearing in the news today about sort of Charles and the royal family visiting the Queen on a daily basis at Balmoral. Do you know any more about what's happening there?
Well, she's obviously not at all well. I mean, she was determined to come down to Buckingham Palace and to say goodbye to Boris Johnson and hello to the new Prime Minister. And she's done that every year since she's been Queen. The number one she did that for was when she was very young and still in her teens. So I think that she must be quite unwell to not come there. And it's going to take place very quietly and privately up in Scotland. So they'll go to her. I mean, I think that's not the problem, but I think it's very interesting that she's hung on so much that she doesn't want to miss out on that. But she won't let Charles do it. He could do it for her as a regent, but she won't let him. She's still there. But he's very compassionate, Charles. He does love his mother, even though they have had on and off things together. But he goes there every morning he can to spend time with her. I also think, cynical me, that he goes there to make sure that Prince Andrew doesn't go and try and persuade her to give him a job within the royal family. He has a way of getting round her and persuading her to do things. And I think that perhaps in addition, first of all comes her health, but in addition, Charles wants to make sure that everything's okay. And in her ill health, she's not pushed to do something that she doesn't want to, but she does want peace in the family.
Angela Levin, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a great pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Now, new research from the Taxpayers Alliance has revealed that 38 top civil servants enjoyed pension pots worth more than £1 million.
It also showed that in the first year of the COVID pandemic, 187 of the most senior civil servants had a cumulative pension pot of £123 million. which the report says was the equivalent to the annual state pension for around 13,464 pensioners.
Well, joining us now to discuss the research further is the Investigations Campaign Manager at the Taxpayers Alliance, Elliot Keck. So, Elliot, can you explain those numbers there? Because we're comparing a whole pension pot with just an annual amount to over 13,000 pensioners. So do you want to explain that and what you found out?
Sure. So every year we look at the number of senior civil servants that have a pension pot of over £1 million. As you correctly said, that we've found about 180 the most senior civil servants have a combined pension pot of about £120 million. So that's about £600,000 per civil servant. And the important thing is to explain why we care about this, because a lot of viewers will think these are very senior people with important jobs paying into their pensions over a lifetime, and inevitably that will amount to a large pension. That's not actually the way that public sector pensions work. Most taxpayers in private sector jobs pay into what's called a defined contribution pension. So you pay in, that goes into an investment, and then it grows each year. And then whatever's left at the end, when you retire, you then take that. Civil service pensions don't work like that. They're unfunded. So civil servants will pay into them, and then the government will then also match that, actually significantly higher than a private sector pension, but then that doesn't go into any separate pot. That doesn't go into any investment pot. That's not put to one side. That just goes into the normal treasury accounts. And then when you retire, there's this liability that the taxpayer has to you. So the reason why we care about this is these are unfunded pensions.
Now, it's on page 16 of the Daily Express today. I see it. It says that the biggest one with the biggest pot was Lord MacDonald from the former Foreign Office Mandarin, £2.2 million pension pot. What people might say, well, what does that mean in real terms? How much will that person be getting in their each year as their pension with a pension pot of £2.2 million?
So I can't remember the details specifically of Lord MacDonald, but the largest, I think, lump sum was about £103,000. So that means that they will get £103,000 on retirement. Some of them will get annual pensions of tens of thousands of pounds, 40, 50, 60,000 pounds a year. So it depends on the specific nature of the individual. Say Lord MacDonald, he's the highest in total. He's since left the civil service. We now have Sir Philip Barton, who has the largest current serving civil service pension pot, and he saw an increase of £325,000 in 1 year.
Now, people say, well, look, you know, in the public sector, these people, very accomplished people, they could have earned a lot more in the private sector, and in effect, their wages suppressed by working in the public sector, and therefore this is sort of some compensation for that. The pension scheme is some compensation for that. What do you say about that?
Well, depends on the individual, of course, but we do find continuously in research that the public sector pay is higher than private sector pay. It's higher by about 14%. Even if you control for factors like education, age, etc., you still find that public sector pay is continuously higher. Yes, private sector may pay better, although the pension schemes are normally much, much less generous than this, but it also has much, much lower job security. Often you're working longer hours, so it's not a simple case of it being a fair compensation.
And Elliot, we're picking on a couple of names here, 120, but a couple are here in the papers. How many people are we really talking about that you're concerned about with civil servant pensions? How much in its totality, and how much money is resting on their pension pots?
Yeah, so we're looking at £2.2 trillion in unfunded pension liability. So this is £2.2 trillion that the government owes to current and former civil servants for their pensions, which we don't have. We don't have this in a pension pot. We don't have this in an investment fund. This is £2.2 trillion that the government owes to people and will inevitably have to pay. So our key policy recommendation is that all civil servants should be put on a defined contribution.
And that's the figure I wanted to get to, because when you look at the whole of the country's debt, where we're up to is 2.3 trillion. It's just gone up, 96% of GDP. Yeah. And what you're talking about here with the pensions is more than that. And therefore, it is huge in its entirety. So you're calling for them all to move across now too.
Yeah, I mean, certainly new civil servants, it would be difficult, I think, with former civil servants to
move them to defined contribution, not final salary.
After they've already agreed a pension scheme. But certainly any new civil servants need to be put onto a defined contribution pension scheme along with the rest of society, as the rest of society and as the rest of the private sector experience.
Elliot Keck, thank you very much indeed for joining us and sharing your research with us. We much appreciate it.
Now I'm going to do some views here. I've got one here from Philip. Morning, Esther. Morning, Philip. It's really a no-brainer. Cash is one of the pillars of freedom, he says. If the banks keep pushing for us to go cashless, they will have full control over how and where and what we do with our money. Just remember Canada with Trudeau freezing the bank accounts. So this is it. It is about freedom.
And Christina says, in regards of energy costs increasing, why are standing charges so high? What do they have to do with the cost of a unit of gas or electricity? I could not use either for a month and it would still cost me a fortune in standing charges. How is this justified? I agree, Christine. I think lots of people are wondering why those standing charges are going up as well as the unit costs, and I've not had a satisfactory answer to that, so I think that's a very good point.
And then Mark here, I can't understand the lack of foresight by the government and the opposition on energy security. Lots of people are talking about that. We want to know that we've got secure energy, affordability, security, reliability, not just green energy.
Yeah,
so
keep the views coming in. We'd love to hear what you think.
That's it for the first hour of the show, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back with an action-packed second hour just after this short break.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning and welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil. We've got lots coming up this hour.
We'll be discussing the BBC, following comments made this week by Emily Maitlis.
We'll also be joined by Kim Woodburn for some tips and tricks on how to keep your house in order at the lowest possible cost.
And we'll be talking to the youngest person to fly solo around the world, 17-year-old Mac Rutherford.
Before all of that, though, it's time for your latest headlines with Polly.
Thank you. Good morning to you. 11 o'clock on GB News, the latest headlines this hour. The Chancellor has warned middle-income earners could be among those struggling to pay their energy bills this winter. Nadeem Zahawi says he's concerned about people who aren't on benefits, telling the Daily Telegraph newspaper those earning around £45,000 a year may need government support. That comes after Ofgem announced an 80% hike in the energy price cap to over £3,500 from October. The cost of living crisis will be a priority for the next Prime Minister. Conservative MP Robert Halfon told GB News Rishi Sunak has a proven track record of helping the country.
I do believe that his track record shows that when it counts, he does help with the cost of living. The government spent £37 billion. It's a huge amount of money, especially with the current spending pressures, to try and help people over the next few months. He acted properly when times were tough. If we didn't have the furlough scheme, my constituents would have become destitute. Our businesses would have closed.
Well, the policy director of the Centre for Social Justice, Joe Shallam, says the current support package doesn't go far enough.
What we've been doing at the Centre for Social Justice is looking at the hit to incomes, particularly those on low incomes, over the autumn and winter period. And what we found is that even when taking into account the existing support package, which is hugely welcome in so many ways, we're still seeing considerable falls in the real incomes of those who are already struggling, frankly. Where we are now is a very, very different picture to where we were when the calculations were made about what needed to go into that package. And it's really urgent that we update our cost of living policy response.
Well, in other news today, police are saying silence is not an option as they appeal for more information on the shooting of Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool. The 9-year-old girl was killed in her home on Monday night. A second man is now being questioned after being arrested on suspicion of murder yesterday. Police also released video showing another arrest with a 36-year-old man from the Huyton area detained on Thursday. They're urging people with names to come forward to help with their investigation. Motorists are facing a weekend of traffic chaos as they try to get away for the bank holiday. The AA has issued an amber warning with an estimated 15 million trips expected over the next couple of days. It's only the second time ever the AA has issued that alert, which is used to indicate traffic congestion. The AA President Edmund King shared his advice for those setting off.
Prepare your car. Check out things like your tyre pressures, your windscreen wiper fluid, your oil, check that all out. Check your route. You can get alternative routes. And one thing we're also saying, we find at the AA, when people break down, almost 40% of people don't really know where they are.
Meanwhile, drivers are also being hit by higher charges, with drop-off fees rising significantly at airports. The RAC motoring organisation found 16 of 22 major airports introduced or raised fees over the last 3 years. Stansted Airport topped the table as the most expensive, charging £7 for up to 15 minutes, up from £4 for 10 minutes before the pandemic. The motoring body says drivers should do their research before heading to an airport. The government's announced a £56 billion plan to crack down on sewage spills. Under the proposals, water companies in the UK will face tough targets to minimise pollution. That's after dozens of warnings were issued for beaches and swimming spots across England and Wales last week, following heavy rain that overwhelmed sewage systems. And lastly, a car that once was owned by Princess Diana is currently being auctioned. The black Ford Escort RS Turbo was driven by the royal from 1985 to 1988. Last June, another Ford Escort used by Diana sold for £52,000. Silverstone Auction says the vehicle is being offered with no reserve price. We'll keep you up to date on that one. That's it. You're up to date so far on GB News. More now from Esther and Philip.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil. Coming up this hour,
we'll be talking about the BBC after former Newsnight host Emily Maitlis said the broadcaster had Tory cronyism at the heart of it. Sorry, it's making me laugh that she said that.
We will be joined by Kim Woodburn to go through tips and tricks of what people can do to cut costs in the household.
And we'll be joined by Mac Rutherford, who this week became the youngest person to fly solo around the world in a small light aircraft.
And as ever, we want to hear from you today, so get involved. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. Before all of that, though, we're delighted to be joined again in the studio by Kevin Woodford. Kevin, What have you seen in the papers today?
Slightly more serious story, which really caught my eye, and I think summarises where we need to go in life through science. There's a lab-grown stem cell embryos with a complete brain created by Cambridge scientists. They used mouse stem cells to form a man-made embryo, which bypasses the need for egg to be fertilised by sperm. It's pretty important, this stuff, because they've already produced hearts by that method. And obviously in the past they've used pig hearts for people that needed a transplant. We had a neighbour, a little girl of 4, who waited a long time for a heart transplant. And the stress, you can imagine, is phenomenal. So I know there's an ethical question here as well, which is interesting. But these scientists are doing this so that, first of all, they can look at any congenital problems that exist in the brain at a very, very early stage, and they can experiment with that, which is amazing. But the ultimate goal is to be able to use human cells to actually produce, this. Incredible. There's a dichotomy for me with this, because I see the need for it. I see the need for this harvesting of organs, which would, prolong and increase life and also give life to people that are losing it. But I do have an issue with it as well, because it's sort of, where are the controls with it? And that's the problem I have with this whole story. And I really struggle with it. I mean, I really, really do struggle with the whole concept. I want it to develop desperately, because I remember the little girl Ellie that lived next door to us, and what she went through and what the parents went through. And had there been a heart available, it would have saved all of that stress and all of that upset, that she had to go through, that they all had to go through. But at the same time, are we as a society capable of putting those controls in to ensure that everything is right, that everything is clean and tidy, and that we haven't got sort of an issue with it?
And I'm thinking you can't probably get everything right and everything clean and tidy, but it is going to be the next decade or so. All of these questions will be coming to Parliament. What are the ethics? What is allowed? What are the safe checks? Whether it's that, whether it's extending science, whether it's supporting people to be alive, or whether it's the other way, people who don't want to be alive anymore. And even driverless cars, the ethics there, a driverless car, how do you choose when it put on the brakes, who does it divert? And all of these things are literally coming before Parliament now, aren't they?
Big issues. Now I've got something that's not a big issue at all. Well, unless you want to look at it in a carry-on sense. I love a good double entendre, Kevin. And if you want to take your wife anywhere, apparently Warwick Castle is the place to go, because lusty ladies are getting in a lather, according to the Sun, page 17, over a castle's long-haired lancer. And their great headline on the paper is, "I want to see your lance a lot."
Oh, please.
And apparently this hunky Will Arnold, 32, he's there at Warwick Castle doing reenactments of the jousting.
Yeah.
He's had 1 million views on social media of him. He's getting all these saucy messages from women. There's some here. "Never in my life have I been so jealous of a horse," one woman sent to him. "It's only an 8-hour drive. I can be there by the morning." Someone else put, "Kids fancy going to Warwick Castle again? Mum, no, we only went yesterday." But anyway, apparently, so Warwick Castle is the place to go if you want to see his lance.
Yeah.
I'll be straight off at 12. I'll be right there. You two can chat about other things. Getting yourself tanned, I think it was. You can go with the sunbed, right? And I will be dashing off
I don't
to
think
the
you'd
castle.
enjoy it that much.
How about this, though? How about this? This is the Mail today, page 27. Should vets be vegans? So this was an article published, written by Leanne Dalton, a veterinary nurse, and she was saying it seemed contradictory to eat meat if you've saved an animal's life, and that actually we have a moral obligation to be vegan. So what do you think of that? There's even more. There's a movement here encouraging people to feed their dogs and cats vegan food. Now, I have to say, What a load of rubbish.
Tripe. I'd call it tripe.
And surely...
I'm with you on that.
And surely it's about the needs of the human being or the needs of the animal. Of course it would be well-sourced. Of course it would, be good food and good meat. But to sort of say you can't if you're working with animals...
But, Esther, I got into huge trouble. I mean, I love vegetarians and vegans. Good luck to you. I'm not one. But good luck to you.
I do several days of veganism.
I know
I'm
you
a
do.
flexi.
And you look well on it, right? Look well on it. But I got a bag on the days when I was doing Ready, Steady, Cook. I got the bag, and it was genuine, right? The bag came in, and as the bag's being turfed out in front of me, right?
Yeah.
They announced, so you've got a vegan with you, right? And it was the days of the lovely Fern Britton, and she said, well, what would you do for vegetarianism and veganism? I said, I'd gather them all together, put them on a plane and send them to France because they know what to do with them. They just give them less meat, don't they? I'm a vegetarian. OK, just have a little bit of chicken, you'll be fine. That's how it is. The French have got it right, haven't they? Let's be quite honest here.
And you got into trouble for that, did you, Kevin?
I got into serious trouble for it, yeah. I got a right telling off, as they say in France.
The question I've got quickly for you is do you get a good night's sleep?
No, if I'm to be honest, I don't actually anymore.
No, well, page 15 of the Daily Mirror says here around 70% of heart attacks and strokes could be prevented if everybody got a good night's sleep. Scientists followed 7,200 over 50s for a decade and found just 10% regularly got, a decent kip. And that if all adults slept properly, then deadly cardiac events would drop 72%. Now, I'm a terrible sleeper.
Are you?
As Esther will. I barely sleep any hours at all a night.
No.
But you sleep and then wake up at a specific time?
No, I just don't sleep at all.
No, just doesn't really sleep.
Really?
So, yeah, it's irritating.
I think what this...
It totally is irritating. Shown the other room when he's just tossing and turning.
So I'm reading this thinking I'm basically a racing certainty for a heart attack here.
I'm with you. 3 o'clock. I mean, I don't know, it's like an internal clock. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm sat up. Whoa, bingo, here we go. Let's jump up.
Party.
But there's no party to be had at 3 o'clock in the morning, Esther, is there?
I'm sure there is somewhere.
There's a dog to take out and give it a quick wee-wee and then try and get back to sleep.
Well, at least the dog's pleased.
Well, the dog's really happy.
Kevin Woodford, thank you very much indeed for telling us all about your sleeping habits and sharing them with Bill as well and his sleeping habits.
Now, former Newsnight host Emily Maitlis has hit out at the BBC, saying her former employer has Tory cronyism at the heart of it.
Maitlis was accused twice of showing bias against the Boris Johnson government. First, when she discussed the now infamous Dominic Cummings Bernard Castle trip, and second, after a Piers Morgan retweet where he questioned the government's pandemic response.
To discuss her comments further, we're delighted to be joined by the former Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, John Whittingdale. John, thank you very much for joining us. What did you make of Emily Maitlis's comments? For most people, it would seem quite extraordinary that her allegation that, in effect, the BBC's been taken over by a Tory sleeper.
Well, Emily Maitlis has form in this area. She has, as Esther said earlier, been hauled over the coals by the BBC for previous tweets, for retweets, not just the ones you mentioned. There have been others. She notoriously retweeted a Rory Stewart tweet, which she then had to withdraw and apologise for. I think she found it uncomfortable to be working for an organisation which is impartial, which has to be impartial, and where there are very strict rules governing their presenters and reporters to make sure that they don't express political opinions. And she clearly found it difficult to keep to those. But I think it was wrong of her to attack the BBC for enforcing their own impartiality rules.
But it wasn't very uncomfortable for her when she was drawing a huge salary from the BBC, I guess, and which sort of helped to make her career. She seemed to manage to stick it out for long enough to draw that massive salary before she decided she needed to move on. But she was saying that, there was a false equivalence in things like the Brexit referendum, where the BBC having to show a pro-Brexit economist alongside an anti-Brexit economist, and she thought that was disgraceful and showed a false equivalence. What did you make of those comments?
Well, firstly, I don't agree with her that all economists were anti-Brexit. In fact, there were a large number of free market economists pro-Brexit who still believe that Brexit presents opportunities. But in a sense, it is the job of the BBC, when reporting a national debate, to present both sides and not to tell people how to vote. That is not how an impartial, objective news provider should behave. And the Brexit referendum, as we know, was actually won by those who believe that we have a better future outside the EU. To make out, as some of the BBC have been guilty of in the past, that you have to be sort of stupid or extreme in order to support Brexit, I fear that she did fall into that category, as every now and again she demonstrated through these tweets.
That Gibb was trying to do was to ensure there was an impartiality. So, you know, whether he questioned people like the hiring of Jess Brammer from the Huffington Post, very anti-conservative sort of view, whether it was questioning the chap on Newsnight looking into the stories, he was brought in a way to look at that, to make sure that there was an impartiality there. So raising the questions shouldn't be an issue. Remember, this is an organisation that brought in, what was it, Philip? James Purnell.
Yeah, without.
And that was a former Labour Secretary of State they brought in without an interview. Just brought him into a job at the BBC, who was a head of strategy. So some might say there was a balancing up here that needed to be, and Maitlis doesn't seem to be able to see that. There needs to be a balancing up at the BBC.
No, I'd actually go further. I think there's a big difference between James Purnell's appointment and the appointment of Robbie Gibb and one or two others in the past to the board. The board has no involvement in editorial decision. So it was fine for, originally, you may remember a long time ago, Joel Barnett, a Labour cabinet minister, to be deputy chairman of the BBC. We then had Chris Patten, former Tory cabinet minister, chair of the BBC. And appointments to the board, and Robbie Gibb actually has a much longer history in the BBC than he did in the Conservative Party. But yes, he had worked for the Conservative Party, but joining the board has never required you to have no previous political affiliation. The difference was James Purnell, who, as you rightly say, was a Labour cabinet minister, was brought into the management of the BBC, where he did have a say over editorial policy. And that I, at the time, said I thought that was wrong. I had nothing against James Purnell personally, but I just did not think that a management member of the BBC should have a former close affiliation with either the Labour Party or the Conservative Party.
John, can I just ask you quickly about, there was a spat on Twitter this week between a BBC journalist, Neil Henderson, and Gary Lineker about impartiality. And Gary Lineker was doing one of his regular anti-government rants on Twitter. And a BBC journalist said that, if he'd have done that, he'd have been sacked, and Gary Lineker should abide by impartiality if he wants to work at the BBC. And Gary Lineker said, well, I do sport, I don't do politics, so it doesn't apply to me. What's your view on whether or not sports presenters should have to have the same rules on impartiality at the BBC as other people?
Well, I mean, actually, if you look at the code which has been brought in by the Director General, yes, it says that those involved in news reporting mustn't express any views, but it actually goes beyond that and says that BBC employees generally have to uphold the standards of the BBC and not bring the BBC into political controversy. And Gary Lineker, as you know, has done so on so many occasions. I think there are big questions over whether or not Gary Lineker really justifies all the amount of money that he's paid by the BBC in the first place. But he, again, has repeatedly strayed into political territory, which I think goes against the rules which the BBC do impose on all their employees.
John Whittindale, former Secretary of State at Culture, Media and Sport, thank you so much indeed for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
And there's something else that I saw in the Mail today, and this was BBC chiefs keep getting it wrong, says radio favourite. You'll remember Roger Bolton there from the sort of points of view, a BBC personality presenter there, and he's saying the BBC never come on and justify what's gone on and what's been said. They don't do it enough, and really they should. This is one of his parting shots. You never, ever get them to sort of come and reply. He said, and remember, the BBC belongs to all of you who pay for it, and that is the taxpayers, and they should come on. And the only reason this touched and resonated with me, we haven't found anybody from the BBC for at least 6 months to come and talk about impartiality. So the fact that a former worker there says exactly the same thing, spot on. So you know what I say? Thank goodness for GB News, where you can talk about whatever, hold people to account, have a fair discussion. Keep watching this channel, it's the one to be on.
Absolutely. Coming up after the break, it's time to take a look at the week's most bizarre stories from the legal world. So don't go anywhere.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Welcome back. It's 11:25. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch. Here's one from Richard. Hi, Esther and Philip. Like so many people, I'm furious with our government over the last 20 years. They have demonstrated total incompetence and outrageous neglect by allowing our country to become energy dependent when we have so much energy sources of our own. Furthermore, charging an electric car is slowly but surely becoming less economic. The net zero target must now be postponed and a sensible strategy employed.
The Taxpayers Alliance research has prompted a few civil servants to get in touch. Joseph says, good morning, Esther and Philip. I'm not sure what civil service I've been working for, but started working for them in 2001 and the pay was low. I left this year. I work part-time, but more without pay, and I've just left with a pension of £6,000. Maybe there are 2 civil services, but my pension is a pittance.
That's why I did ask, what was he talking about? Because we kept talking about 123. There's lots more civil servants.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And part of that 123.
Elizabeth said, as an ex-civil servant, I have a pension and contributed 12% of my salary for over 30 years and did not have a choice in the matter. I worked out that even taking into account the rises, I would have to live till I was just over 80 just to break even with what I paid in. So people having different views about the civil service pension scheme.
Thank you for writing in and telling us. Anyway, we're now joined in the studio to talk about some bizarre stories this week from the legal world. It's friend of the show, Andrew Eborn. So tell us what's been happening.
Well, good morning. I'm glad you all got the message and the note about blue on blue. I think this week was obviously sort of a joy. What I love is when the front pages reflect the back pages and they merge into one. The delicious fusion of celebrity and the law. We've had a lot of that this week. Nick Kyrgios, the wonderful bad boy of tennis, the Aussie bad boy, he's being sued. You might remember in the Wimbledon final, he was put off by somebody. He does this sort of wonderful, he spits at the audience occasionally, and he was put off by somebody in the audience, and he had a little contretemps, if you like, with the umpire, and said, it's that woman over there who looks as though she's had 700 drinks, bro. Well, that woman happened to be a Polish lawyer, the worst people the worst people ever. And her name was Ania Palas. She's 32. She was there with her mother. And she said, well, hang about, I only had a Pimm's and a rosé. I didn't have 700 drinks. And you've defamed me. So she's now suing him for defamation.
Well, I find this interesting. I mean, surely everybody knew that he didn't mean that literally, presumably.
I think as the bad boy, you're right. You're absolutely right.
And would anybody have known who this person was? So, I mean, he's got to be defame your reputation, but presumably nobody would have known who...
It's the standard test, as we discussed with other cases, with the Johnny Depp and the Wagatha Christie. You've got to basically, is their reputation damaged? Have they been lowered in the eyes of right-thinking people? And has serious harm been caused? You're right. By giving all these interviews and telling the world 1 million people have watched me and being drunk or not being drunk, as the case may be, all of a sudden you're repeating the defamatory remarks. And so the spotlight is on her. She's saying that she wants to clear her name. It was terribly embarrassing. She was removed from Wimbledon for a period of time with her mother.
So she was identified.
She was identified. Right. Pictures of her on that. She was taken out of the court with her mum, and she said it was terribly humiliating. Millions of people saw this. All I want is to clear my name, and I'll give any money I make to charity and to the lawyers. So it worked on that sort of
That is a charity, isn't it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'll tell you what, it is, actually, if you work on that sort of basis, because, as you know, one of the other big stories of the week, I spoke about this previously on our wonderful show, is that the barristers on strike. Now, they've been doing a bi-weekly one, but from September the 5th, I think something else is happening on September the 5th, announcing the new Prime Minister, they're going to be going on an all-out strike. The Criminal Bar Association voted 80% of their members, said, we're going to go for an indefinite strike. And this is going to be a massive thing, because what's happening is that, and we talked about this last time, the image of lawyers with lark's tongue in aspic and swimming in Cristal champagne, that's true for maybe some lawyers, some included. 2% of the profession earn over $1 million, but 12% earn less than 30,000. And actually what the Criminal Bar Association said is that about the younger people in their first 3 years are actually learning less than £12,500. So they're below the poverty line. In fact, you would earn more as a barrister in a coffee shop than you would as a barrister in court. And that's the problem. And it's legal aid cases. And it's not just the money, it's also the time it takes to pay. Because what happens is you don't get your money until the end of a case. And a case could go on for a very long period of time. And we are losing people in the profession at a terrible rate. So it's hemorrhaging talent as a result of the poor pay.
Okay. But does there need to be some... I mean, I've seen some of the legal aid companies that are at the top. There's some of the top... Some legal firms are creaming off a massive amount in legal aid. So there seems to be a poor spread between the top and the bottom. And does it just need to be evened out?
No, it's an absolutely fair thing. And so what's been offered? They've been offered 15%, and they're asking for 25%. But these percentages are irrelevant until you look at the actual figures. And obviously 15% of $1 million is
the only thing we're talking about that. And by the way, when they became barristers, they knew how the payment structure was. You knew what you worked for, how long. So maybe modernise the practices. But what I'm interested in is the people who should have been in court, were waiting for people to be convicted, had cases in one way or another, serious sort of criminal cases. These are now being pushed back indefinitely. Yeah. So I'm hearing from the people the other side, who are maybe the victims, wanting people to put away and might never get any justice. Memories go, notes are different, etc., etc. So I think we need to look at it from the victim side.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. And the victims, absolutely, there are 60,000 cases which are waiting to...
More criminals walk in the streets before they...
No, it's scandalous. We need to address both, and in the same way as other professions and so on and so forth, they need to get a fair wage for what happens. Crime doesn't pay, not only for the criminals, but nor for the criminal barristers either.
Andrew, thank you very much indeed. I'm still reeling over the Nick Kyrgios case, to be perfectly honest. I thought you were going to say that he was suing her for losing the match, but anyway, I think that's an interesting one. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up after the break, we'll be chatting to Kim Woodburn about the most cost-effective ways to keep your household running during the cost of living crisis. But first, it's time for your latest headlines with Polly.
Just after 11:30, the headlines. The Chancellor has warned middle-income earners could struggle to pay their energy bills this winter, saying he's concerned now about those who aren't on benefits. Speaking to the Daily Telegraph newspaper, Nadeem Zahawi said people earning around £45,000 a year may need government support. That comes after Ofgem announced an 80% hike in the energy price cap to cover £3,500 from October. Police investigating the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool say silence is not an option. They're appealing for more help from the public now. That's after they've released a video showing a man being arrested in the Huyton area on suspicion of murder. A second man who was detained yesterday is also being questioned. Motorists are facing traffic chaos over the bank holiday, with the AA issuing an amber warning for this weekend. An estimated 15 million trips are expected over the next couple of days. It's only the second time the alert has been issued, indicating heavy traffic congestion. And a car that was once owned by Princess Diana is going up for auction. The black Ford Escort RS Turbo was driven by the Princess from 1985 to 1988. Last June, another Ford Escort used by Diana sold for £52,000. Silverstone Auctions says the vehicle's being offered with no reserve price. Those are the headlines. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. Now back to Esther and Philip.
Now, everyone is talking about the increasing costs, but what we want to know is what can we do to reduce expenditure, to get the cost down, as it were, for what we have to pay. So joining us now is TV personality from the programme How Clean Is Your House, and also the author of The Cleaning Bible, Kim Woodburn. Wonderful for you to be with us today. But as I said, all of the newspaper headlines are about how much things are going to cost, inflation, energy costs. So we want to know from you, where can we start getting those bills down?
Do you know, there are so many ways, my love, they really are. I made a full list, I could go on forever. Now, I've got to read one, I've made so many here. Now, for instance, you can turn off your appliances when they're on standby. Your toaster, your microwave, your kettle, they're on standby. Turn them off from the wall when you're not using them, my love. You will save a lot of money. Also, go and buy, my lovely, well, almost all electrical appliances can be turned off, so be aware it's £5 here, it's £10 there, but these things will mount up over the year, you see. Now, you're clicking your thermostat down, you see, from 25 to 24, you can go as low as 22, will save you money. Small amounts, but they're going to mount up, my love, they really are. So do that, my love. And you know what, now, I've got one here, draught proofing. Now, many houses you go into, and there's drafts coming from everywhere. I mean, the windows, doors. You're your own worst enemy in these hard times. If you can't afford draft excluders, go and grab an old towel, lovey, throw it against the door, on them, you do dusters, you do anything you want, but get rid of the drafts coming into your house. They are not helping, my love. You're freezing cold and it's not nice. I've got so much here, I could go on and on. Now, now here are, my love. Turn your lights off. Now, we are so wasteful with our lights, aren't we? You go into a house, don't you? She's got the hall light on, the toilet light she's left on. It may not mean anything then, it does now. Don't leave your lights on and use as few lights as you need to have to be comfortable, my lovey. I mean, you know, what's wrong with sitting in the dark when you're watching telly?
I agree with you, Kim. It adds to the atmosphere, doesn't it? The lights off. Can I ask you something, Kim? Kim, when I'll tell you something that I frequently do, and you can tell me whether you think this is any good. You know, dishwasher tablets, which are extortionately expensive. I always break them in half, so I've got double the box worth. So that's my way, and every pack of those is a fortune. Now, are there things like that you feel you could do? Anything like that?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Whether we realise or not, we're wasting money. Every day in the house we waste because why not? Who's going to count? We've now got to count, my love. Things are very difficult. We've got another one here. Now, showering. Now, I like to be clean, dear. Don't we all like our bubbles and stuff? But a lot of people spend a heck of a lot of time in that shower, dear, and they're there. Get out of the shower, get in there, have a quick dub down, or, you know, get out. You're wasting money. And if you're showering every day, you shouldn't need a 10-minute shower every day. You know, 4 minutes will do you, dear. Do everything. Get out. A bath now. Oh, no, come on now. And if you, and another thing, shower with your husband. I mean, you could. Stop it.
Are you allowed 10 minutes there because there's two of you?
Look, I'm 80, I look lovely, I'm passionate. Now, but no, seriously, less shower time. Don't fill that bath full. It's lovely when utilities are a good price. They are not a good price. Fill that bath a third full. You'll get all your bits in and you're sitting and swilling the water. You will save gargantuan amounts of money. Trust me. And it's all £5 here and £10 there. On a year, it makes a heck of a difference, my love. Now, so another thing, washing. Now, we all got a washing machine. Well, you know, now look, don't do your washing when you've got little bits to do. Don't waste that washing machine, my love. Don't waste it. Make sure when you use it, it is full to capacity. Not you know how full it should be. And also, if the washing isn't that dirty, just a little bit, go a lower wash, my love. Do it on 30. I'll put it in for 3 hours. Oh, don't be so silly. If it's mildly dirty on a couple of days, you could do a 30 wash for half an hour. On my washing machine, my lovely Monday, I have a 14-minute wash. So if I have things like lingerie, well, you know, a little bit, I shan't put it to it. I don't want to shock you. I'll put it in for a 14-minute wash. Another thing I'm going to say this to you, kids are going to hate me, but I don't care. Don't let your little ones, your children, come in from school and be up in that bedroom for 4 hours on the computer. Now, look, if it's educational, of course, but if it's tackling to their friends, get them off those computers. Get up there, turn them off. They can go on their mobile phones, dear.
Kim Woodburn, we've got some cracking ideas from you. And we're going to thank you very much for all them. We've got people emailing in as well as you. So thank you for your...
There's loads you can do, dear. There's loads you can...
We're going to have you back on to talk more.
Wash, my dear. Get over a bowl with a bar of soap, hand wash. I did it during the war, didn't harm me. No. Now, listen,
hand wash and this.
The money's not there anymore. Economise. That's all I can say. You can save a great deal.
Kim, thank you very much indeed. As a Yorkshireman, it's music to my ears what you've been saying there. So we appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
And I've got Sylvie here who said exactly the same thing as Kim did. She said to cut down on the use of electricity usage, I've already started to use the kitchen sink to wash my underwear and socks and t-shirts and any other small items, and only using the washing machine for heavy towels, bedding, heavy clothing, and then only use the machine to spin dry and hang everything out in the garden like we used to, not put them on dryer. So now, fantastic.
What Kim didn't mention is that my ruling, which Esther never abides by, is that the heating should not be on, in my opinion, for the 6 months of October, from the beginning of October through to the end of March you can have it on, and then April to September you should never have the heating on, in my opinion. And I say to Esther, put a jumper on, put a cardigan on, put a coat on if you need be. But I'm afraid
this is like an argument back home.
I think there should be something about, you know, put some more clothing on.
Well, do you know what? Well, I've got
on?
one for you then.
Oh, here we
it
go.
now says it's going to be 10p each time you boil a kettle, and I can't tell you how many cups of tea you have. It's like a non-stop cup of tea going on, and you boil the kettle every time. Well, no, either cut back on the tea or put your hot water in a flask.
This is going to run
You
and
do
run.
that, and I will think about not putting the heater on, but only on a cold day during the summer. Only on a cold day. I don't do it all the time. It's only on a cold day. Anyway, now that you've had that little matrimonial tip, coming up after the break, we'll be speaking to the younger solo pilot to fly around the world in a small aircraft. Don't go anywhere. We'll carry on arguing.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And things like that. So she's been extremely helpful throughout my whole journey. And she's actually the one who gave me the world record that I took from her. So she's been very nice and very, very kind.
Before you go on a solo flight around the world?
Sorry?
What sort of training do you have to do for a solo flight around the world?
So, of course, you need a bit of experience beforehand. You can't just jump into it. So before I flew around the world, I did 2 transatlantics with my dad. And basically, I went in a small airplane with my dad and flew across the Atlantic because that's what he does for a job. And really so that I could get experience, because the Atlantic is one of the most dangerous and most difficult parts of the journey. So to do that was really helpful, just to prepare me for what was to come.
You want to tell us about what were some of the challenges you faced? Because I'm quite sure there were some scary moments. Do you want to tell us about those?
Well, yes. So probably the most stressful moment on my flight around the world was when I was flying from Japan to the US. So I had a 10-hour flight from Japan to a small island in the North Pacific called Attu Island. Attu Island is completely abandoned. Not a single person lives on that island. It's been abandoned for over 10 years. There's just an airport there with no one. And so after this long 10-hour flight, I arrive at this island. It's getting dark. It's low clouds. It's raining a bit. I land there, and then on the side of the runway, I see this small shed, and like there's no one there, so I park next to it and stay in that small shed for the night, and that's sort of what happened, and that was probably the most exciting, most difficult part of my journey.
Matt, can I just ask quickly before you go, what's next? What is your next adventure going to be?
Well, the next adventure is probably back to school and try and catch up as much as I can.
Sounds a bit duller to me, but...
Well, I want to know about things like sleep deprivation. How often could you eat? What could you pack into the plane? I mean, it's weights and balances, fuel, and all of this. Was there no dangerous stories with that?
Well, so in terms of sleep, it was very difficult to get any sleep at all, particularly on that flight. Food-wise, also the most difficult on that island, I had like a few Oreos and a protein bar as my supper. And actually, because it's such a small airplane, when it comes to weight and balance, basically all the weight has to go in the back, and I had to add extra fuel tanks just for that flight. So my plane was tail heavy, so basically what you need to do is just try and trim forwards and just be very careful on takeoff. It was the only way of being able to do this trip and to be able to carry on around the world. So there are definitely some daunting moments throughout my trip.
Matt Rutherford, absolute star. We can't wait till you do your next challenge, and we'll have you back on GB News. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, what a remarkable guy.
And so low-key as well, just playing it all down. But now, go on. Are we going to do some views?
We've had quite a few views in. Parker says, let the barristers strike. There are too many of them anyway. So, Parker, maybe many people would agree with that.
And then I've got Jason. Hi there, Esther. Bang on. I have not watched the BBC for years. GB News is refreshing. I've watched it since its launch. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Alan says, since when has the Beeb not been biased, especially Lineker? I would not pay him a penny. I pay my licence fee, but never watch any of the programmes from this lefty snowflake woke brigade. Scrap it now. Strong words there, Alan.
And Alison says, it's all fair and well with the tips, but if politicians had done the right policies for the people in the country, we wouldn't need to be told this.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Now it's time to take a look at the week's sport and showbiz. We've got Aidan and Hayley as usual in the studio with us. Who wants to go first?
Well, I want to talk about Gladiators coming back after 20 years.
Absolutely.
Literally, my life is now complete, Bill, because, yes, it's coming back to BBC One. It's an 11-episode series, and I have missed my Saturday nights without Gladiators. Apparently, we don't know, actually, who is going to be the host. Apparently, there is talks it has been maybe Holly Willoughby. But what we do know is that they will have the Travelator at the end. Do you remember when they had to run up that Travelator? Yes. I mean, not many people could do it, but that is definitely going to be coming back. But I think they're going to have a whole new set of gladiators because obviously the ones that used to be, I was looking up their ages and I think some of them are in their 60s. And even John Fashanu, apparently, no, not John Fashanu, John, do you remember the referee?
Oh, yeah.
I remember him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Apparently
Can't remember his name, though.
I can't remember his name, but apparently he's 90 years old.
No way.
Yes.
Well, now, I was reading... Wolf must be in his late 60s.
Yeah, what a legend.
He came to my door once.
Really?
No, there's no joke.
Yes,
it's not a joke. I swear this is not a joke. I live with his brother, but his brother didn't tell me that Wolf was his brother. Sorry, and so he came to the door one day when he moved out and moved some furniture. And this is not a joke.
I know.
It's not a joke, I swear, it's not. He came to the door, and Wolf, this is like 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and it was Wolf from Gladiators at my door. And I said, Jim, Wolf from Gladiators at the door. And he goes, yes, my brother. And he left the house and said, I'll explain later. He didn't want to let on because he thought he was embarrassed.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, and he said,
it's a true story.
I thought you were going to say, and I'll huff and I'll puff.
No,
I'll down if you don't let me in again.
Now, I read in the paper somewhere today that the people from the original Gladiators were complaining that it was all going to be, it was going to be a shadow of its former self because of health and safety rules.
Well, that's it, isn't it, these days? But I hope not, because I feel like that series really worked.
It did.
And everyone loved it. I actually went to Birmingham to the NEC to watch it live. That's how much of a fan I am.
Do you remember the big cotton bud thing?
Yeah.
The big, this thing, I think it's a cotton bud anyway.
Yeah. One of my favourite, I think, ladies, it was Eunice, wasn't it, from Liverpool. I think she was a contender. She won, and then I think she became part of the team. And she's now, she now does all
Even could become one of the gladiators in the...
Well, yeah, you know,
it's been...
What would we call you? Not Warrior or Cobra, all these names, Lightning and Jet.
Jet was the best.
Yeah.
Hunter?
Hunter, yeah, I've interviewed him, and he's still looking good, yeah.
I think we've got a couple of them on the show tomorrow. We come on, not this show, obviously, but on GBNews. I think Wolf's coming on a video link from New Zealand. He lives in New Zealand now.
Coming to your door first.
No, it's not coming to my door, no. If he wants to help with furniture, he can, but...
Now, the other story that interested me was about the Strictly curse striking again.
Yes.
Or has it?
Well, Adam Peaty has split up with his girlfriend. It hasn't been confirmed it's anything to do with the Strictly curse, can I just put that out there? But I think in general, when you go on Strictly, unless you're in a really stable relationship, there is a chance that something could happen. I mean, you're up close and sweaty to someone gorgeous all day. I think things are going to happen, right? And they have happened so many times. Don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of success stories. Stacey Dooley, she's currently pregnant. And there's a lot of...
She was up close and sweaty somewhere, wasn't she?
But also, I can remember the time when Sean Walsh and Katia, they were caught kissing. And they tried to push it off, but
I think you have got a point. That's lots of time you're sort of spent together in a sort of semi-naked state, dancing very closely, smooching, as it were. So I guess sign us up. Sign us up.
You need 2 horses on it. They're definitely in a stable relationship.
Oh gosh.
Now, I thought you might be wanting to gloat to Esther about the poor form of Liverpool.
I don't want to gloat. No. I mean...
Where did that question come from?
He does.
Yeah, it's his idea. It's his idea.
I knew it was his idea.
He wanted to get your dad. He wants to get your dad on
to complain about Klopp. He's lost the plot.
I'm going to call my dad right now and say Philip's not with us bank holiday weekend.
Well, listen, they've had really poor form. They've got Bournemouth at home today. But if you look at Man United, so Man United produces performance from the gods on Monday. They go to Southampton today at 12:30. So we'll see what their mentality looks like. Can they raise it against Liverpool? Yes, they did. They produced a brilliant performance. They go to Southampton today. It's the equivalent of going to Stoke on a Tuesday night these days, isn't it? Seeing as Stoke are not in the Premier League anymore. And we'll see what their mentality is like. Have they just got players a bunch of fancy Dans who raise it for the big games but don't perform against Southampton? We'll find out today.
And England are going to win the Test match.
Yeah, it looks like it. But I mean, I want to talk about Ben Stokes briefly because he was on the Phoenix from the Ashes this week about his battle with mental health. Yeah. He talked about quitting cricket altogether. And this is a guy who's always performed well for England. It's not like he was struggling necessarily on the pitch. And yesterday, by coincidence, obviously the Amazon are showing the series this week, and by coincidence he produced 100 yesterday out of nowhere. And it was an incredible performance because it's put England within contention. They're going to square the series today. We're underway from 11 o'clock at Old Trafford. So fair props to him.
And another England story, Miss England. will be the first time. There's times that she won't be wearing makeup.
Yeah, she's actually
I can't believe she's doing that
without makeup. I mean, she's absolutely drop dead gorgeous, to be fair. But yeah, it hasn't been known for people to take part like that before. But I think beauty contests have changed so much. Back from the olden days where it's just about your looks, now it's about your personality, public speaking, charity work. There's so much more to it these days. I know a lot of my friends have competed in these contests, and yeah, it's all changed. But yeah, good on the girl for doing. Oh, there she is. Yeah, look at her. Fair play.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be doing it.
No, definitely not. I need a makeup artist.
You were Mr. Doncaster, weren't you?
Yes, get that rumour going. Keep the rumour going.
We better thank Aidan on that note and Hayley on that note. Look, well, that's all from us today, but we'll be back next Saturday from 10 a.m. Now, though, it's time for Alistair Stewart and his friends. Thanks, everybody. It's been great. It's been fun. Don't go anywhere.
Good morning, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather updates. This weekend, a bank holiday for many of us, is looking pretty dry, with most of us seeing some decent spells of sunshine as well. High pressure is slowly but surely moving in. There are some weather fronts which are closing in on the northwest. They'll increase the cloud here today, but generally it is set fair. Now, I say generally because there will still be one or two scattered showers around, certainly across parts of northern England this morning, and even this afternoon as we go into the evening across parts of the Midlands and southern England. One or two showers here and there, but I say most places aren't going to see those showers. Many will just stay dry and bright with sunny spells. In the sunshine, feeling pretty warm by this afternoon. It's got a fresh start out there this morning, especially in western Scotland, but by this afternoon, 18, 19 here. Elsewhere, we're over 20 Celsius, and in the south, by this afternoon, widely into the mid-20s, so feeling pretty pleasant in those sunny spells. That weather front will bring a bit of rain to the north of Northern Ireland.